Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the top things you need to know when making the move here to Phoenix, Arizona. These are a lot of topics that people talk about when they call in and ask questions, and it's also a lot of topics that you might see online when look at some of the blog posts. So we're going to take all those, we're going to combine them, I'm going to put them into a basket, we're going to pick them out at random and talk about them thoroughly to kind of give you a better idea on who's telling you the truth, what's accurate, what's not true, and just general things that you need to know before thinking about making the move. So if you think that might be helpful, then stay tuned. All right, guys, we've got a lot to cover today, so we're going to jump right into it. But I think all of these are important, and I picked out about 30 topics that I believe you really need to know when you're making the move here to Arizona. These are topics that a lot of people ask us about when they're calling to make the move, and also a lot of popular things I'm seeing online when it comes to pros and cons. I'm really kind of diving into that, really going through a little bit more detail that I think is important for you to know. So I've got a big basket of about 30 topics here. Let's jump right into it. All right, let's get started. We'll shake this up a little bit just to see what we've got. Let me kind of play around in here, figure out what we've got. Number one is lack of greenery. Yeah, I think this is a pretty fair statement when it comes to living in Phoenix here. There is a lack of greenery. Makes sense. We're in the desert. You're not going to see all the lush trees and grass and landscape that you might be used to coming from another state. It makes sense because of it just doesn't rain here very often. But I typically notice it the most when I'm flying into town here and you're landing in Phoenix and you just look down and it doesn't look like there's any green everywhere, and it looks pretty nasty in my mind, especially when you're comparing it to flying into other cities and stuff. Once you get down here, it has a little bit different feel, and depending on the area you go, it gets cleaned up quite a bit. But yeah, there's definitely a major lack of greenery compared to what you might be used to coming in from another area for sure. All right, what do we got for number two? Our hands-off law. This is one I kind of added at the end here. I almost forgot about it, and I don't think it gets talked about that often, but we do have a law here in Arizona now when it comes to using your phone while driving. I think it's a good idea to have it, especially with all the people that text and drive and all that, and even just talking on the phone. So as of 2021, a law went into effect that it is illegal for you to use your phone while driving. So I don't hear a lot of people getting pulled over. I don't know how much it's actually policed a lot. And I find myself every now and then not using my hands-free accidentally. I don't know if it's a huge issue that gets enforced a lot, but it is in place obviously for safety and making sure that people do their best to try to not use their phone while driving. Truthfully, I still see people doing it. You always see people look over at another window and you can tell they're on their phone. It's still a major problem here when it comes to drivers, probably everywhere, not only here in Arizona, but there is a law hopefully to help push it down a little bit. All right, up next, we've got solar, good or bad? This is another topic that people make a lot of assumptions over, and when you're living here in Phoenix, Arizona, I think a lot of people would believe that having solar would be a good idea. And unfortunately, most of people's experience when it comes to solar here in Arizona, I would say is mostly negative, and that is due to a lot of different reasons. I would say the cost just haven't made sense for the overall benefit when it comes to having solar. You also have a lot of companies that have come out and given these solar leases to a lot of people and kind of sold people on the idea of a solar lease and having that be a benefit to people. And trust me when I say that, that has been more challenging for people that have that than it's been a positive. So yeah, the idea of solar makes sense, and the idea of using solar to, reduce your energy bills and everything about the idea makes sense. The execution has not been good. The cost effectiveness has not been good, and it's been more of a pain for people than it's been a positive. And so definitely take your time and do your research on what type of situations are out there when it comes to solar, if you're thinking that solar might make sense for you. But for the most part, I have not seen it become a positive in Arizona so far. I'm hoping that can change in the future because we have as much sun as we do. So hopefully we can turn that around into a more positive situation. But as of right now, I would say it's more challenging than it is helpful. All right, what's number 4 here? How long does the summer last? All right, I added this one in here because it seems like when you read online, there might be a little debate on how long our summers actually last, like the brutal heat of the summers and how many months. You hear a lot of people maybe throwing out, hey, it's only a couple months that hot, and then the rest of the year is great. My personal opinion is you typically are going to have the extreme heat from June, July, August going into September. You're typically going to have 100 degrees plus going into that. If not, obviously like this year we had 110 plus for about, 45, 50 straight days. And then maybe in May and a little bit in October, you're going to get a little bit of a mix of both. You're going to have some nice weather mixed in with some hotter weather that is kind of thrown in there. So let's call it, in my mind, 4 months of extreme heat and then 2 months of kind of a little bit, warm. And then the rest of the year tends to be very nice. But those summers can feel like they last for a long time for sure. Here we go again. All right, another interesting one, low cost of living and tax rate. Yeah, another topic we see quite often, or people who bring these up in the blog, is like low cost of living when it comes to living in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know how many times I see that brought up as a positive when it comes to living in Phoenix. So I don't know if people have run the numbers lately, but again, Phoenix might be more affordable than a few places in the U.S. right now, where you can kind of come in and have it be a little bit less expensive than what you're already dealing with. For most people, Arizona has become a lot more expensive. So I don't think the low cost of living tends to make sense anymore. And I have a lot of people who, kind of reach out and they have large budgets and they're like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And then you're like, okay, well, here's what you can get for your large budget. And people are like, okay, that doesn't make sense for me anymore. So I think there is this common misconception that, Arizona is much more affordable than where you're coming from. Most of the time, I don't think that's the case anymore. So just be aware that we're not going to be as affordable as a lot of these blog posts talk about. Hopefully it's more affordable than where you're coming from, but don't expect it to be, and do your research before you make the move out here and think that that's going to happen. All right, what do we got here next? Low crime rate. All right, so I saw this topic in a few blog posts that were brought up from a pros of living here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I figured I'd throw it into the mix here. I don't know if I have the right answer when it comes to this, because I definitely think there are definitely a lot of challenges when it comes to crime here in the Phoenix area that, would need to be addressed. It's probably like that in every area. I do think it's all a matter of perspective. So if you're coming from another area that is just having constant challenges with, issues when it comes to theft and when it comes to violent crimes and when it comes to, all sorts of potential things when it comes to crime, I definitely understand that like some people might come to the Phoenix area and be like, hey, this place is so much better than what I'm used to. So I get that. I think there would be a lot of people who live here like, hey, we deal with our share of stuff on a regular basis, whether that is, break-ins or theft, or, I'm sure there's little pocket areas that might have some violent crime. I don't typically hear too much about that, and I don't experience it from my end. So a lot of it is about personal experience. I think the only time I've ever had anything happen in my life living here is I had somebody break into my car and steal a Garmin like in the, 10, 15 years ago. That's the only experience that I've had when it comes to crime. So knock on wood, I've been a little bit lucky, and all of my experience is typically what I hear from the news, which is always going to be bad. But for the most part, I wanted to, kind of talk about that and get other people's opinions, because Arizona isn't perfect, but we might have a little bit better situation than what you're coming from. Back to the basket we go. This one might be fun. Purple state. All right, I was waiting to see when we'd find one of the more controversial subjects, and this might be one of them. But it's important to talk about. I think it's important to have a good perspective. There's a lot of people with a ton of different opinions, and I'm somebody who values opinions from all over the board. I don't tend to align myself with one side or another, but it's something that people talk about a lot. Arizona used to be considered a very red state, very conservative state. It has changed a little bit over the years to a certain perspective. A lot of people are going to blame the migration of people moving in from other states, especially California, and all the people talk about people coming in from Democratic states turning this into a purple state. In my mind, I think it's a positive. Number one, the people that are moving to Arizona are not moving to Arizona because they want to change it into a blue state in my mind most of the time. That's not the conversations I'm having. Most people are wanting to leave the states and try to come to a state that's a little bit more conservative and more in line with their values. I think where the good mix comes in is we're in a situation here where we're not completely run by the far left or the far right. You got a good mix. And so I don't vote just down a party line. I vote for who I think is the best candidate, who's going to be the best for all of the people in the area here. And so to me, you got to work a lot harder as a politician to make sure that you're going to win and win over the crowd and win over a moderate crowd and not just the far left or the far right. That to me is a positive. So if you have to work a lot harder in order to get somebody's vote, to me, I'm going to take that every day versus a place that if you are going to run as one side or the other, that's going to guarantee you a win. So in my mind, I love being a purple state. I think it's a positive. I think it's going to help make us stronger. And there's always going to be things that you disagree with. Maybe you're not going to be totally in line with how the state operates, but I look around at so many other places and what they're dealing with. And this is the hard part for me because the summers here drive me crazy, but I don't know where else to live because I love so many other things about Arizona. And to me, a lot of that has to deal with the overall opinions and values of what we do here. All right. Next up, we've got traffic and easy to get around by car. All right, I put those two together because I think they kind of fall in line with each other. I'm a big believer that for the most part, the traffic situation here in the Metro Phoenix area is more of a positive than a negative. You are going to have certain traffic situations, and depending on the time of year, obviously our spring season, we have a lot of people in town. Traffic's going to be a little bit more challenging during those times of year, but when I've been going to other areas, and if you're comparing traffic when it comes to, especially anybody who's coming from California, coming from Colorado, coming from the Northwest, coming from the East Coast, I mean, there are a lot more challenging traffic situations in my mind than what we have going on here in Arizona. Our freeway situation allows people to get from the farthest points of the Northwest to the Southeast in, probably like an hour and 15 minutes at the most. So you can get around pretty good because of the way the system is set up, the number of freeways here, and how traffic typically flows. So if there's no accidents going on, you're typically going to be moving in a general pace. So even if there is a lot of traffic on the road, you're rarely in a situation where you're having to slow down or you're in kind of stop and go type situation. So I think our traffic situation is more of a positive here than typically where other people are coming from. The stupid motorist law. All right, I wanted to include this one as well because it is unique to Arizona, so it might not be something you've heard of, but the stupid motorist law was put into effect because we've had a lot of situations where a storm would come in, and because it's so dry here in the desert, the water doesn't absorb into the ground. So if you get a major rainstorm coming in, it drops a ton of water. All of a sudden, we've got some pretty heavy flooding in a lot of areas, and there's certain areas that will cause these washes, and people want to drive their car right into them. Not a good idea. So a lot of times you'll see like barriers set up in certain parts of town that are going to be in a kind of a flood wash situation. People decide that they would rather go around those blockages and drive right into flowing water. Not a good idea, but people do it. So the stupid motorist law was put into place to stop that and actually fine you if you have to be rescued in a situation like that. So that was why it was put in there, to try to help that. I read into it actually a little bit recently, and it doesn't even sound like it's been ever used, as far as nobody's been fined, because they don't want people in a situation where they don't want to call for help if they're in a dangerous situation because they don't want to get fined. So understandable, but it is out there as a law. So hopefully it prevents people from ever getting to that situation, even if nobody's ever been fined for being stupid. Quick reminder for you guys, we have people reaching out to us every day who are looking to make the move here to the Phoenix area, and we absolutely love it. So we've got our contact info on screen. Make sure to reach out to us so we can help guide you in the right direction. All right, let's keep it going. There's a lot of these, I know. Here's another one that's fun. Let's talk about the water shortage. All right, here's another subject that might be a little controversial, but it's something that we do need to talk about. We want to bring it up, and we bring it to your attention if you're not already thinking about it. But I think most people already have it in the back of their mind, and you're going to see comments all over videos, all over the place. At least I see them all the time when it comes to like, hey, Arizona's running out of water. I wouldn't move there. How is this even happening with Arizona not having water? There is a very big misconception about what our water situation is. I'm not going to spend too much time in this video covering it because it is a longer video, and there are a lot of other videos that are out there that I think do a great job explaining it. I'm happy to share those with you. But in my mind, I think there's a misconception about what's happening. There's obviously challenges when it comes to water here in the state, but I think that's mostly due to the agricultural side. It does not really have that much to do with some of the residential stuff that's already in place. So there is that misconception when it comes to that. So again, I don't want to give a generalization overall that like, hey, everything is fine. That you do have to do your research and you have to understand what's going on. But I also think that it's completely overblown. Some of the people are like, hey, Arizona's out of water. That is not the case. And I think if most people took a really good look at what's going on with water situation here in general, I think they would feel a lot more comfortable about knowing that they can come here and everything's going to be okay, and you're going to be able to move into a home and turn on your water and it's going to be there when you need it. But again, do your research, use some common sense, and make the decision on your own. We can definitely help guide you as to some resources that we think are good for you to take a look at and understand, but make sure that you do your own research before you listen to anybody else. All right. Low school ratings. Here's another subject that I see a lot online when it comes to moving to Arizona in general. And it always, Arizona is just always ranked in the bottom of the states when it comes to our schools. Now, I haven't figured out exactly what that is. It looked like when you kind of dig into it a little bit, a lot of it is because of graduation rates and that type of thing. I don't know if there are certain things, certain types of issues that are going on here in Arizona that are causing it to be ranked as low as it is. But the unfortunate part, it is always ranked low. So what does that mean for you when you're coming here? It's hard to say. I have a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old daughter. They haven't gone through the school system. I can't say for sure like what it's like to go through the school system, but I have a ton of friends that have their kids in school, and it seems like most people are pretty happy outside of a few little, miscellaneous things that kind of come up along the way. There's a lot of highly rated school districts when people are looking to move out here, and there's a lot of popular areas that people tend to feel very confident in the schools out here and in how they do. But for whatever reason, that has never translated into Arizona being a highly rated state in general, or even in the middle range. So I'm not exactly sure what causes Arizona to be ranked so low, but if you're looking around online, you're like, where does Arizona rank when it comes to schools? It's usually pretty low, unfortunately. All right. We've got casual attire, and I put coats in the 60s. I'll explain. Yeah, I definitely wanted to include this subject because I think when people are making the move here to the Phoenix area, they will notice that a lot of people tend to dress a lot more casual than where you're coming from. The heat just kind of puts you in a situation where, maybe you just don't want to dress up as much as you used to. And, as somebody who wears shorts and polo a lot of the year, I'm kind of in that same type of mindset environment. And, when people are coming out here, you're typically going to dress down a little bit. You can still dress nice, but just not as not dress up as much as you used to. And then the other thing that I wanted to say, your coats in the 60s, it is funny because once the weather cools down here just a little bit, and I'm talking, we get into like November time period, and then all of a sudden you start seeing lows kind of drop into like the 60s. Everybody wants to dress warmer because of the season per se. And so you see people wearing like coats when it's, and like hats and stuff, and too, when it's like 60 degrees outside. And I don't know, it's hilarious to me. But it is something you're going to see here in Arizona. People get so tired of dressing for warm weather that they want to dress for cold weather, and so maybe they think they can manifest it by wearing a coat and a hat, that they can bring the cold weather in. I'm not sure what the reasoning is, or that people just get so adjusted to warm temperatures that all of a sudden they feel cold. Who knows? But it is kind of funny when you come out here and it's 60 degrees and people are wearing coats. Next one is the hard water and the taste of the water. Yeah, I thought this was another important one to bring up as well, because there's so much attention paid right now to the water issue when it comes to whether we're running out of water or not. And I think the bigger issue is, for people that are moving here and to kind of get to know what we deal with here in Arizona is basically the hard water that we deal with, and also the taste of the water, because those are things that you're going to deal with on a daily basis. And let's talk hard water first. Hard water is basically some mineral deposits that are in the water, and over time, if you have hard water in your house, you're going to start to see mineral buildups on your faucets and your fixtures and stuff like that. And so we do have a bunch of people who like water softeners, and they install water softeners in their house. And I could probably do a whole video on water softeners. Personally, I'm not even a fan of water softeners. I'd rather just deal with the hard water and deal with the mineral deposits. But it is something for people coming out here, especially when you're buying new homes, you got to educate yourself on, because there's all these people like, hey, you need a soft water system and you need to do this and that and the other thing. And so it's going to be a topic that's brought up to you. The second thing is the taste of the water. I figured I'd bring this up as well. A lot of people have these RO units in their home and say, hey, you don't want to drink the water. It tastes horrible. People drink bottled water all the time. So there's these extra costs because people are basically, either buying a bunch of bottled water or buying these filtration systems for their water. I used to be on board with that. Now I don't even care. I drink water right out of the tap. I make sure it's cold, and if it's cold, then I don't even care anymore. So now that I've been out here 30 years, it's not something that bothers me as much anymore. But I know if you're coming from other areas and you're comparing the water taste, we're going to be lacking for most people. All right, we got healthy economy and job market. Yeah, definitely. This is a topic that comes up in a lot of the blog posts or videos when it comes to pros and cons of living here in the Phoenix area. And I think it continues to be a positive overall. We are seeing a really good amount of companies and high-paying jobs that continue to come into the Phoenix area. And so I've done videos on this in the past as well, when you can talk about some of the big companies and some of the opportunities that are out there for other people coming in, and what they're doing, why they're coming to Arizona, why they think it's a positive, why they think it continues to grow. So something that we're going to have to continue to keep an eye on with the, some of the affordability issues that we're seeing not only here in Arizona but across the country. But as of now, we are seeing a lot of money being invested into the Phoenix area from larger companies that need employees for that. So at this point, it continues to be a good thing for our state, and hopefully that will continue going into the future. All right, what's next? We've got plenty of getaways. This is actually probably a lot more important topic than most people might realize. And I have this conversation a lot with people who are looking to make the move here, and kind of giving them some ideas on what they can do if you're getting tired of being or dealing with the summer heat. And the good part in my mind about Arizona is you're so close to so many things that can kind of get you away from that. So within Arizona, you're always like a 2 to 3 hour drive from a lot of different places, getting up to northern Arizona, going to see Flagstaff, going to see Sedona, going to see the White Mountains. There's a lot of places that can get you into a completely different environment where you can get up into cooler temperatures. You can get up into seeing snow if you just like to visit snow and don't like to live in it anymore. It gives you a good opportunity to do that. You're also very close to getting to Southern California. You're a 5 hour drive to San Diego, 6 hour drive to LA if you want to get into the beach over there. We do have the area down in Rocky Point, Mexico, Puerto Penasco, which is a 3.5 hour drive. A lot of us like to take that trip down and enjoy the beach down there. You're pretty close to getting to Vegas. So there's a lot of drivable / very quick flights that you can kind of explore here in the area that can kind of give you a little bit of a break from what's going on. Next up is legalized marijuana. Yeah, this is another topic that I wanted to talk about because we recently became another state that legalized recreational marijuana use. But it's funny because in my mind, I haven't seen like any kind of major effects or changes from adding that law. It seems like it's been a positive thing for the most part from what I can tell. I remember going flying into Denver a few years ago after they had legalized. This was probably back in like 2017, and I was hanging out in downtown Denver, and you could smell smell it all over your place. And you're like, okay, well, I don't have anything against it, but like when you're going into environments and you just know that it's all around you, it's like going to a concert environment and you're in the city, it maybe feels a little bit different. I haven't noticed that ever here living in Phoenix after we've had this law for the past couple of years being in effect. So, I talk to a lot of people that maybe partake and kind of go through that, but I don't see it from a public perspective that has caused any issues. I also don't hear about it with a perspective of people driving under the influence of marijuana, that type of thing. So I still think alcohol is a more issue than marijuana when it comes to that. So from my perspective, what I'm seeing, I think the law has generally been more of a positive than a negative, and I don't think it's something that you typically see in a public environment here, at least in my mind, that I think would cause any issues. So, if you're looking to make the move here and you're wondering about that, then I think it's probably not something that's going to be of a concern to you. All right. Well, this is a popular subject. Everyone has a pool. Yeah, this subject comes up quite a bit. I think the assumption is that if you're living in Arizona, you have to have a pool. And obviously pools are popular here in Arizona, but it's not 100% the case where everybody's going to have one. And there's a lot of people that just don't want one. So we go through this as far as like, what are the pros and cons of owning a pool here in Arizona? Because, for people that have kids and you want to spend time doing something with your kids at home during the summer months and have something to do, a pool is a huge positive. But for those of you who might leave during the summer and might not want to deal with the pool throughout the year, you're not going to touch your pool typically for 8 months out of the year unless you have a heater on it, or there's other ways to kind of keep it heated just because you just stop using it. So, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to keep it kept up during the rest of the year. So it's a year-long maintenance challenge. It's a year-long cost. You use it for maybe 3 to 4 months out of the year typically. So for a lot of people, that might not be worth it for them. So you really have to decide whether it makes sense. But again, the assumption is everybody's got a pool. That's not true. Figure out what makes sense for you and just understand that it might not, as much as it sounds fun to have one, you might not need one. All right, what do we got next? Oh, self-driving cars. Yeah, we've seen a lot of this going on over the past few years. Arizona has been a popular place for technology companies to come and test out their self-driving vehicles. Uber had theirs for a brief period of time. They discontinued it because of an accident that happened, but we are seeing it a lot. I think Waymo right now is the company that tends to have the most self-driving cars out on the road here in the area now, and you can actually use them to get as an Uber or Lyft type situation where you can go take a taxi and you're going to have a self-driving car that can get you around town, similar to ordering Uber or Lyft. So I still haven't done that. I'm going to have to try that. I actually downloaded the app the other day because I have this Waymo that just kind of constantly is sitting in my neighborhood in the mornings just chilling and hanging out. But it's kind of funny to, again, like when you're driving around and you turn your head and you like look over at another car and there's nobody in the car. It's interesting to see. So I don't know how many other areas have that, and so maybe you're used to it depending on where you're coming from. I haven't really studied that, but it might be something for you to know if you come into town and you're like, hey, why is there nobody driving that car? Back we go. No natural disasters. Yeah, here's another topic that I think is pretty important to kind of bring up when people are looking to make the move, and it's one of the positives because, from a weather situation, we typically don't deal with any major like natural disasters. We've got the extreme heat, which obviously is a challenge, but we don't have to deal with the tornadoes. We don't have to deal with hurricanes. We don't have to deal with earthquakes. We don't see too many major fires and stuff like that. We do have a little bit of forest fire action in kind of in northern Arizona, but not to the extent that a lot of people are seeing from where they're coming from. And so outside of like a few dust storms that blow in, during our summer season when we have these a little bit of change weather patterns with the monsoon seasons and the extreme heat, we really don't have to deal with these major issues when it comes to, what other states might be dealing with. And winter storms, that's another one. Obviously, the winter storms are a huge thing that people have to deal with. So all these like natural disasters and things that cause major things is very rare as far as a challenge when it comes to Arizona. So I think that tends to be a positive for a lot of people, especially when, you're thinking about Florida right now and going through the hurricanes and the lack of insurance or insurance coverage going up. I mean, there's a lot of cost involved with what people have to deal with when they have to deal with these type of natural disasters. We don't have to deal with it as much. Makes life a little bit easier. All right, let's go back to the basket here and snowbird traffic. Yeah, this one I added, I kind of threw in snowbird traffic as kind of a general idea for all of the winter visitor traffic. Not all of them are considered snowbirds. A snowbird was a term that was kind of brought into place for retirees that spend their winters here in Arizona and then go back home for the rest of the year. So, but let's just talk about winter visitors in general and how that affects the traffic situation, because we talked about traffic earlier in the video, and we talked about how in the spring season it goes from being an area that's not too bad from a traffic perspective to we now have a huge influx of people coming in from all over the country and the world, I would say, as well. And our traffic isn't as nice, isn't as good as we would typically like it. Again, it still might not be as bad as what you're dealing with coming from your area, but it's something that you gotta think about. And you got, when you're driving down the freeway and you got some people going like 40 miles an hour and other people are going 90 miles an hour. Yeah, it tends to maybe cause a few challenges here and there when it comes to our overall traffic situation. But the pros of the spring season outweigh the cons in my mind when it comes to the traffic. But just be aware that we do see a lot more action going on in the spring season. All right, they're starting to dwindle down here. There's still a few more. I know we're going through a lot, but I appreciate you guys staying with me here. All right, next up, I've got the homeless population is growing. Yeah, this is an unfortunate subject to talk about, but it's definitely happening here in the Phoenix area, maybe happening all over right now because of how expensive everything has become, but we're definitely seeing more issues with it. Again, comparing us to other states, maybe we're not anywhere near some of the challenges that other people are going with right now. So I'm sure that's a conversation that people will be like, hey, you guys have nothing compared to what we're dealing with here. But it's definitely from a perspective of driving around and just kind of seeing it and seeing people more out in the corner and seeing more people like setting up like little shelters under the overpasses and stuff like that. Yes, we're seeing more of it. It's not a fun thing for anybody to go through, and it sucks. But yes, we're seeing more of it here, and it's something that it has to be addressed. And I'm not sure what the solution is for it. It's probably going to continue to be a challenge as long as we've got the high cost of what we have right now. So I'm not sure what the solution is, but from a perspective of just knowing that we're going through some of those challenges right now, and you're probably going to see it when you're out here, quite likely that you will. More tends to be in like the central Phoenix area when I've been driving around, so you might not see it on some of the other outskirts, but it's out there for sure. All right, next on the list we have a lack of insects. Yeah, here's another subject that I think is important to talk about, but maybe lacks a little bit of context. And I would say that, yes, there probably is not the insect issue that here in Arizona that you might have in other areas, whether it's, in more humid climates, colder climates, that type of thing. We do have the ability, thankfully, to be able to open up doors and windows, especially when it's a nicer time of year, and not have to worry about things coming into the house. You do have a few flies here and there. We do get mosquitoes. If we get any kind of rain, it kind of breeds mosquitoes, that type of thing. So that happens, and we do have times where we have to worry about that and have insect repellent for your kids and that type of thing. But from a comparing perspective and a situation of comparing where you're coming from to moving to Arizona, I think most people find that there's a lot less to deal with here in Arizona when it comes to insects in general. There are people, and we're definitely a family that we have our home sprayed for spiders, and you got to always watch out for termites. Termites are something that you're always going to have to test for when you're looking to purchase a home around here. Termites are going to be found, that type of thing. You might have cockroaches here or there depending on your situation. So it's there. It's not non-existent, but it's something that you typically don't have to worry as much about. What is monsoon season? All right, so for those of you who are new to Arizona, you might hear about monsoon season, you might hear about dust storms, you might hear about haboobs. Everybody likes to talk about that. It's a fun thing for people to say for whatever reason. But so monsoon season, so we get these basically typically kind of coming in around the July, August timeframe. So it's during the heat of the summer, and it tends to come in, tends to bring in some dust storms. We've been a little bit light on them this year. We had a storm blow in the other day, actually, that brings in a lot of wind, a lot of dust, kind of just comes in and covers the area. You get some pretty massive amounts of rain in certain spots. It kind of comes in and just hits little pocket areas here and there, and can do a pretty good amount of damage when it comes to like taking down trees and stuff like that. We've had some major storms that have done some damage to buildings. So, we don't get too much of an issue when it comes to monsoons. It's not a major threat to most people, but it can come in and cause a little havoc here and there. It's our only change of season, so it's actually something for a lot of us that we enjoy during the summer months to kind of just change the weather up, except for just extreme heat all the time. Dangerous wildlife and critters. Yeah, this is always a topic of conversation when people are calling in and asking questions, and everybody, there's a common assumption that we are, any neighborhood that you choose to live in is going to have rattlesnakes everywhere and scorpions everywhere, and maybe you're going to have a bobcat, that type of thing. It's not as common as people might think. I mean, you can if you're going on hikes into the desert, you're going to find some rattlesnakes. There are going to be some communities that maybe more have more scorpions, and you have to treat for that type of thing. But it's not hugely common in most areas. You're probably not going to have that as a major concern. It might be a slight concern depending on where you're at, but it's not going to be something that is overruling thing that you're going to have to think about when you live in Arizona overall. There's going to be a lot of desert communities that maybe, you're going to see some wildlife. You're going to see a bobcat. You're going to see a coyote. You're going to see a javelina. And that's part of the draw to a certain extent is having that. As long as you're not messing with any of them, typically they won't mess with you, and they'll come in and out of your neighborhood here and there and that type of thing. But as far as like your messing with your daily life, it shouldn't be a major issue. It's just something that you're going to have to see in the desert environment and always kind of be watching out for just in case. Here's another decent one. No public transportation. Yeah, this is another topic that I think is important for people to know. You're going to read topics about how you need a car when you're living in Phoenix, Arizona. I think that makes sense for the majority of people who live out here. It's very spread out. You're going to need the transportation to get to place when it comes to just an affordability factor. There's very few places that you can live in where you can be like, hey, I'm going to take the bus. I'm going to hop on the light rail. We do have the bus, our bus system. We do have the light rail. I just don't think for most people that makes sense from a situation of being very helpful as far as getting you where you need to go. It might help a very small percentage of people who live here. So yes, those are out there for potential ways to kind of help people get around. But overall, our public transportation isn't known for being a positive way for people to kind of get around in affordable ways. So if you're looking for an environment that is good for that, I don't know if living in Phoenix makes the most sense, or the Phoenix metro area makes the most sense. Might be on a small level scale for certain people, but most people will not have a good experience with that. All right, next up, lack of seasons. Yeah, this is a topic that I've seen brought up quite a bit, and it's something that I've even talked about in my own experience coming from growing up in Colorado and making the move here to Phoenix, and just kind of, getting to, acclimated with the nice weather. I mean, you got sunny temperature or sunny weather all year long. There's not a whole lot of rain. There's not a whole lot of seasonal type situations that come in outside of the extreme summer heat, and then it kind of cools down a little bit as you get into the late part of the year. But when you're typically coming from an area that has like a really nice summer, and you get into fall, and you've got the leaves turning, and you're getting ready for snow to come, and you've got the holidays coming, those types of things, when you're used to that, are kind of nice. Now, I always tell people, like, the lack of seasons here doesn't bother me once we get to January 1st. Obviously, all the other stuff, you can leave it all behind, and everybody's tired of the cold weather, and they don't want anything to do with that. So lack of seasons has a little bit of negative when you're getting into holidays if you have, kind of a sentimental feel for what you're used to dealing with. But after that is done and you get into the first part of January, it doesn't even matter for most people. But it is something to consider when you're making that move. All right, getting close to the end here. What is up next? And we're going to say goodbye to winter weather. Yeah, so I put this one in because I do think there is a common misconception when it comes to coming out to live in Phoenix, and or if you're visiting out here and people are coming out maybe in January or February and they think it's going to be warm all year long, especially in like the winter months. And so, yes, you don't have to worry about snow like here in Phoenix for the most part. You don't have to worry about freezing temperatures, ice, shoveling snow, scraping ice off your windshields. It does cool down and it does get below freezing at night during January and February during some cold fronts and that type of thing. So you will have to dress warmer. You will have to potentially, turn the heat on in your house and stuff like that. So you got to prepare for that. So you don't want to come out here and think you're going to be hitting pool weather all year long. A lot of people come out and they think it's like going down to Mexico where it's like, hey, we're heading down in January, you're going to be ready to hit the pool. I wouldn't say that's going to be something that most people do, but you do have to prepare for that. So yes, we do have cold months that you need to prepare for. Not what you're used to, but definitely something to think about. All right, what's next here? Walkability and potential lack of. Yeah, I see this topic come up a lot when it comes to walkability in general. And most of the Phoenix area is not well known. There's not too many neighborhoods that you would say, hey, this is a great neighborhood for walkability. Most of the neighborhoods, like we're just built around having a car when you live here. There's very few people that say, hey, I'm gonna be able to come in, not have a car, be able to get around pretty easily, and be able to walk to wherever I want to go. I mean, there's certain neighborhoods that you have some access that you can walk to some grocery stores and coffee shops and some restaurants and stuff like that isn't too bad. But overall, general walkability isn't what the Phoenix area is known for. So you might be able to find a few spots, downtown Phoenix being one. There's some parts of Arcadia. There's some certain areas in Scottsdale that I think of that come to mind when it comes to walkability, but generally not known for that. So when people are looking for that, it's going to be few and far between. Air quality. Good or bad? Yeah, I saw this pop up on a couple blog posts as well, and it's funny because some people had the air quality listed as a pro and a con living in Phoenix here, so I threw it in the mix. And it's probably a matter of perspective depending on, number one, how you look at it, whether, certain times of year here where we have a lot worse air quality than others, obviously from where you're coming from, if you're dealing with, major issues when it comes to that. From my perspective here, from an air quality situation, most of it is something that I do not actually even think about. So when I saw this topic, I wrote it down, but I was like, I don't know how much I can speak to it because there's not a lot of times where I just go outside and feel like, hey, we've got really bad air quality today, or there's a scent in the air. Or I know a lot of people have been dealing with like smoke from fires coming in from all sorts of areas this year, and just having all that. We haven't really dealt with that. We haven't had too many forest fires this year that I can think of that have caused anything. There's always people talk about kind of that little smoggy cloud over the Phoenix area sometimes. So you have that. I mean, we're not perfect in any means, but again, from a waking up and dealing with stuff, I think for the most part, I find our air quality to be just fine. And there's going to be good days. There's going to be bad days. There's going to be the winter time where there's no burn days. But I would say it's more of a positive than a negative, especially when people are coming into town here. It's probably going to be something that you're not going to have to think about that often. I think we're down to the last one. And what do we got? The summer heat is dangerous. Yeah, I definitely think this is an important one to bring up as well, because there's so many people that come into visit Arizona. Maybe if you're either visiting or you're new to Arizona and you want to get out and explore and you want to go hit the trails, especially we've got so many nice hiking trails to go on throughout the valley, and just go out and enjoy yourself. And a lot of people are in good condition to go do this, and typically from where they're coming from, and they get out and as soon as that heat hits them, it can get you quick. And if you're not prepared, if you don't have enough water, if you're not protected clothing wise, if you don't have enough shade, if you go out at the wrong time, that could mean putting yourself in a dangerous situation, either having to get rescued potentially, and even potential death. So we've seen that every year here where people come out typically from other areas, and they put themselves in situations where they get stranded and aren't prepared. Dehydration kicks in. So be prepared for that and be careful, and don't mess with the summer heat here. Try to get out and explore. Get out early. Try to go hit the trails early in the morning. It's awesome to get up here in the morning during the summer at 5:30, 6 in the morning. Get all that stuff done early before the sun comes up. You have a little bit of sunrise, and then get out of it. The other thing is that's also dangerous is also, and this is probably goes from everybody across the country, but never leave your kids in the car, never leave your pets in the car. That should be a given. But again, we just see situations that happen like that, and people just maybe don't realize how hot it can get as quickly as it does, even if you think you're doing it for a short period of time. So again, be cautious. The heat is brutal out here for sure during the summer, and it's not only just uncomfortable, but it can be dangerous in certain situations as well. All right, guys, let us know if we missed anything on your end. Is there anything that you've heard about the Phoenix area that we didn't cover? What are some things that we need to talk about some more? And if you're looking to make the move here and you need us to guide you in the right direction on what is right for you, best places to live, best neighborhoods, that type of thing, make sure to reach out to us. We've got our contact info on screen. As always, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, however you want to get a hold of us. We got your back, and until the next video, we'll catch you later.